Superspeedway racing in NASCAR has always been described as high-speed chess. You're strapped in a race car traveling at 190 miles per hour trying to think on the fly while surrounded by a big group of cars. You're constantly thinking, and not only you're hoping to make the right move, but you hope you got the car capable of making that move. Even though superspeedway racing has changed over the years, it's remained a high-speed chess game. The most prestigious NASCAR race is the Daytona 500, and it's pretty easy to pinpoint the 500s that really stood out. We've seen these big moments shown plenty of times over the years, and these moments are fried into every NASCAR's fan's brain. But then you got Daytona 500s that have gotten overlooked, 500s that didn't have that big wow moment, and for that, they kinda get lost in the shuffle. I think one of the most underappreciated Daytona 500s in my opinion is the 2004 Daytona 500, a race that gets quite a bit of flack from the fan base. The sport's most popular driver Dale Earnhardt Jr. won that race, so that's really the lone reason why it gets brought up sometimes. The race itself, on the other hand, is a blur to a lot of people. It's looked at as boring. It wasn't a normal superspeedway race even for its time. Fans are used to seeing a big snarling pack of race cars flashing by on their TV screens, and they expect to see that all the way to the finish. With the 2004 Daytona 500, we didn't get that, but the race was still very intriguing for a multitude of reasons. This is one of those races where it was a very strategic chess match that was planned out throughout the entire race. Going into the 04 500, one of the many storylines was Goodyear bringing a new tire that was a softer compound. It was described to have a more compliant construction on both sides of the car. The tire made more grip, but the wear was heavy, and this was something drivers wanted because this was an effort in trying to put it back more into the driver's hands so they can make more of a difference. Also around this time period, NASCAR was trying to make an effort in breaking the packs up at superspeedways. In 2003, they went to a smaller fuel cell, and what this did is that it made drivers have to make more pit stops throughout the race, and this was supposed to spread the field out because usually after green flag pit stops, the field is usually a little bit more spread out. Heavy tire wear, smaller fuel cells, a rough and bumpy Daytona surface, and a race that doesn't experience that many yellows are all the elements that can lead to a race being like the 2004 Daytona 500. The two favorites going into this race was Dale Earnhardt Jr. and Tony Stewart, both looking for their first 500 win. They finished 1-2 in their duel race, and these are two guys that are superspeedway aces, especially Dale Earnhardt Jr. Biffle was on the pole but had to drop to the rear due to an engine change, and they gave Dale Earnhardt Jr. the top spot as he led the field to green, and right from the jump, Jr. and Tony Stewart was running 1-2 and took control of the race. Even though Jr. and Tony wasn't teammates, they always worked well together at the superspeedways. They both got the same philosophy when it comes to plate racing. They always take the runs they get, and they want to be out front at all times. With this race, it was no different. The caution waved on lap 8 because Mark Martin blew an engine which laid oil on the track. A few guys decided to pit because tires were that valuable. The race went back green on lap 12 and the field was packed up, but after about 12 to 15 laps, the tire wear really started to show up, and drivers were fighting handling issues which led to the field spreading out. Jr. and Tony continued to lead the field and work together. Jr. even adjusted his line to give Tony Stewart a headlight, basically trying to give Tony Stewart some clean air so his car could turn better and help his right front tire. On lap 30, green flag pit stop started. Jr. had the lead coming into pit road, but here's Tony Stewart outbraking Jr. coming onto pit road and would actually take the lead that way. Tony pit crew did a good job with the pit stop, and the 20 beats the 8 off pit road. Tony Stewart making it known that he's going to be aggressive coming into the pits, and he ends up prevailing because of that. Not the last time we talk about entries onto pit road in this video. In the middle of this green flag cycle, a caution came out for Derek Cope, who right coming off of turn 4. The leaders just barely managed to stay on the lead lap, but it was some others like Elliott Sadler and Ricky Rudd who didn't get so lucky. So Tony Stewart is the leader, but he's restarting behind cars that's at the tail end of the lead lap and cars that's a lap down. Instead of me explaining this, I think Alan Bester could explain it better than I can.
So now Tony Stewart in front of Dale Jr. And Stewart is the race leader. There are a handful of cars in front of him on the racetrack in that outside lane, though. Those are all people on the tail end of the lead lap. The pace car came out and picked up the leader. Those cars were all a lap down at the time. The leaders peeled off the pit. These cars didn't. The leaders came off pit road behind them. They basically got 2.5 miles to make up on Tony Stewart. They are tail end of the lead lap.
Yeah, I know, it's pretty confusing, but that's how NASCAR handled lap down cars back in the day. They took the restart on lap 39 and things start to get interesting. Tony Stewart shoots to the outside and makes it 3 wide while Dale Earnhardt Jr. followed Tony through. Meanwhile, you had Jimmie Johnson all the way down by the yellow line challenging for the lead. This is absolutely wild. The leaders are battling for the top spot with cars that's a lap down or at the tail end of the lead lap mixed in, and it made this restart so chaotic. In the middle of this chaos, Junior and Kurt Busch made contact, and Kurt Busch ended up being the unlucky guy to cut a tire. Let's just say the 97 team didn't forget this, as it would cost them to go laps down and eliminate their chances of winning the Daytona 500. After everything started to settle down, Junior took the lead from Jimmy, and shortly after that a caution happened on the backstretch that involved Kenny Schrader, Rusty Wallace, and Jeff Green. The leaders pit, and once again Tony Stewart pit crew came through as he would come off pit road first. After a short green flag run, I guess you could say the big wow moment happened in the race as the big one struck on lap 71. This wreck had Michael Watcher flipping down the backstretch, and it's actually one of the more forgettable flips in NASCAR. Everyone was okay, and now we enter the part of the race where the race will experience a very long green flag run as they will take the restart on lap 81 and run all the way to lap 200 with no cautions, which nobody saw coming. Up to this point, Dale Earnhardt Jr. and Tony Stewart had been at the very front all day, but Jr. actually got himself into a hairy situation as he would get hung out to dry and lose positions. Meanwhile, you got Stewart, Gordon, and Johnson 3 wide for the lead. Pretty shocking that nobody was willing to settle down after the big one just happened. Tony Stewart is back at the front and Jr. is hovering around 5th to 7th. Like I stated earlier, Jr. likes to be at the very front at all times. Meanwhile, you got Tony Stewart out front, who has shown to be very fast. You can tell Jr. aggression was picking up. He was making some aggressive moves, all on the back of drivers' bumpers, trying to get back to his drafting buddy Tony Stewart, and maybe find out what Tony's weaknesses were. It was other guys that had fast cars as well, like Greg Biffle, who started in the back and got to the front, Kurt Busch, but was a lap down, and the Hendrick teammates of Jimmie Johnson and Jeff Gordon. You also had underdogs like both Bill Davis racing drivers Scott Wimmer and Dave Blaney, who were in the top 10. Junior got to 3rd, but once again fell back dealing with a tight race car, but Earnhardt kept making his way back into the top 3, picking guys off one by one. Green flag pit stops approach, and something that Dale Earnhardt Jr. and Tony Stewart did all race was short pit. They did that during the first green flag pit cycle, and they did it for the remainder of the race. What this did is give them a massive advantage when everything cycled around. The 20, 16, and 8 had about a 2-second lead over the next pack of cars, but those guys ran them down. Dale Earnhardt Jr. once again found himself in another bad situation as he got hung out again trying to make a pass on Biffle for second. If Junior was going to be behind anybody in this race, it was going to be the 20. It seemed like he spent the 3rd quarter of this race trying to get back to the rear bumper of the 20, but would get shuffled out. But man, that 8 car was a rocket. He finally got back to the 20, and now he was in a position he wanted to be in. Tony Stewart probably has mixed feelings about this. Hey, I got my drafting partner behind me, but I know he has a very fast car, and by the way, he's a super speedway master. Here we go, green flag pit stops once again on lap 137, and look who peeled off first. The 8 and the 20, but there's others with them as well. Tony Stewart gets another quick stop, but for Dale Earnhardt Jr., it was the opposite. He came out behind Tony Stewart, Scott Wimmer, and Kurt Busch. Luckily for Junior, he has a fast car and had help from Biffle and Gordon to get back up to that lead group. Once again, Junior had to fight to get back to Tony Stewart, and after a pass on Scott Wimmer and Kurt Busch, he was once again back behind the 20. Now, how does he pass him? Believe it or not, the leaders were putting quite a few cars a lap down around this point in the race, and with that you will assume that it will present an opportunity for Junior, but it never materialized. The last pit stop of the day is coming up, and the plan for the 8 team of Dale Jr. was to beat the 20 off pit road. Something to remember is how Tony Stewart got the lead from Junior early on in the race. Tony Stewart overtook Junior coming to pit road, and I'm sure that's something Junior stored in the memory bank. Coming on the pit road for the final pit stop of the race, Dale Jr. tried to outbrake Tony Stewart onto pit road but was unsuccessful. He still has his pit crew that could still win him the race off pit road, which will be huge. Can Tony Stewart crew pull off another lightning stop? No mistakes from the drivers, and both crews deliver good pit stops, but it ended up being Tony Stewart beating Dale Jr. off pit road. But it wasn't for the lead. Scott Wimmer was the guy that was gone as they decided to give their driver 2 tires trying to play spoiler. You had some drivers that pitted with Junior and Tony but were eliminated from contention. Jeff Gordon had a slow stop and Greg Biffle sped on pit road. The two heavyweights loomed in second and third after green flag pit stops cycled out, and Scott Wimmer is a lonely guy out front. He has the two fastest cars behind him with 4 fresh tires whilst Wimmer was on 2. Wimmer tried to hold off the 20 and the 8 but couldn't keep that car on the bottom and got passed by Earnhardt, Tony Stewart, and oh yeah, the 97 of Kurt Busch, who was a lap down. So let's set up this final run to the checkers. Tony Stewart has led the most laps in this race and has been pretty much playing defense all race. Dale Earnhardt Jr. found himself in multiple sticky situations but finally got himself in position to try to win the race. And they got 2 guys behind them. Scott Wimmer was third but was losing ground with those 2 tires. But Kurt Busch is there, and if Junior tries to make a move, there's a good chance Kurt doesn't go with him. Why? Let's flash back to earlier in the race when Junior and Kurt Busch made contact, which cut down the tire of the 97, and because of that reason, it's why he's a lap down instead of fighting for the win. So now you're just waiting for Junior to make his move. The 8 car is moving up and down, making Tony really mirror drive. Typically, drivers wait until a few laps left in a race to make their move for the win at super speedways, but Junior pulled the trigger with 20 laps to go. They're side by side going into turn 1. What's about to take place is just amazing to watch and absolutely brilliant. Sit back and watch how Dale Earnhardt Jr. makes this amazing pass on Tony Stewart.
Help push him. Kevin Harvick and his teammate Jimmy Johnson are in that pack, so they're going to try to hook up as they're making the pass.
Junior going for the lead of the Daytona 500.
We'll see who
so
97 goes.
Not wanting to give it up.
97, who's he going with?
Gonna go with Stewart.
22, and he's going with Stewart.
I had to think he would.
Junior could not quite make it. He's still trying. Here he goes
look
again.
At this. Another run to the inside of Stewart, and he might have him this time.
A great run.
You're clear.
New leader of the 500 is Dale Earnhardt Jr.
How did Junior make that pass? It's absolutely mind-blowing. First of all, you look at the massive run Junior gets off turn 4. He swings high and crosses over to the low side and gets side by side with the 20. Then you see this image. In the middle of turns 1 and 2, you most likely think Junior is done for. 3 cars lined up at the top while Junior is a lonely man on the bottom of the track. And when they get off turn 2, you will assume that they would just blow by the 8 car. This doesn't happen, and instead, Junior is able to stay side by side with Stewart, just barely coming off the corner somehow. Then he works the side drive to perfection. He just gets to the quarter panel of the 20, which slows him down, gets to his door going into 3, pulls down and takes the lead. That pass was absolutely brilliant. Even Dale Earnhardt Jr. himself doesn't even know how he was able to get the pass done. Making a pass like that takes a fast, great handling race car and a skillful driver that knows how to really work the draft. That was a work of art. There's still over 15 laps to go, which means Tony Stewart has time. Now, how does he reclaim the lead? He has Kurt Busch behind him, and obviously the 97 doesn't want to see the 8 win. So now Tony is trying to back up to Kurt and hopefully get a run on Junior. But Tony just couldn't get close to him. Tony is maneuvering his car all over the place trying to make something happen, but the 8 car of Dale Earnhardt Jr. is just too fast. This 500, by the way, has an old school look. It's like watching a Daytona 500 from the 1970s. It's down to 2 drivers battling to win the sport's biggest race. The laps continue to click off and Tony Stewart comes over the radio and says, "That's all I got." It was going to take a bobble from Dale Earnhardt Jr. if Stewart wanted to have a chance at victory, but Jr. never made a mistake and went on to win the Daytona 500. What an absolute duel between the 8 and the 20 all race. It was Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s first Daytona 500 win, and it came at his 5th try. He won it 6 years after his father finally conquered the Daytona 500, and fortunately for Little E, he didn't have to wait a long time to win the 500. Jr. would go on to win one more Daytona 500 in his career, which would come in 2014. As for Tony Stewart, he would continue to experience heartbreak in the Daytona 500. His best opportunity would come in 2008, as he's leading on the last lap but chooses to stay with his teammate Kyle Busch at the time, and would get passed by the Penske cars of Ryan Newman and Kurt Busch. This would be Stewart's last good opportunity at winning the Daytona 500, but he did win a Daytona 500 as a car owner in 2017. The 2004 Daytona 500 was a very intriguing race. It was 2 drivers that established themselves to be the guys to beat, and they both had hurdles to jump over throughout the race. They hounded each other throughout the entire event. It was a cat and mouse game at 190 miles per hour, and even though Junior and Stewart worked together throughout the race, They pulled tactics on each other, showing their hand at times throughout the race. It was one of the best Daytona 500 chess matches I ever seen. A race like this deserves more flowers. It's a race that has the big headline because the most popular driver won, but the race itself is overlooked by a lot of fans, and I'm hoping that more people can learn to appreciate it. I hope you guys enjoyed looking back on this amazing Daytona 500 chess match with me. I'm gonna go ahead and roll up out of here. Y'all have a good one. Peace.